Hiya, Michelle.
Hi, Deb. You all right?
I'm good. Well, I say I'm good. I'm full of cold.
Oh, bless you. Found
I'm not
it.
the best. Yeah, I'm not
No.
the best. But if you blow my nose and snivelly, you know why.
Carry on. Carry on.
So we've not actually met before, have
No, we
we?
haven't.
Um,
No.
I think I'm not sure if you've been following Resolo on Facebook and
Yeah, do
stuff.
you know what? I'm trying to think how it came up. I think it was almost like a bit of fate, really. I think you popped up on Facebook, Resolute, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. Clicked on it as you do, and then obviously came to arrange the podcast as a result of that, I think, Deb.
Yeah. So you've seen a couple of podcasts up to now, so you kind of know. Well, from your own lived experience, you'll know the gist of it all.
Yes, yeah.
But we're going to focus on your experiences because we do believe that it's really important that you get your voice heard.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it really is as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I think the more people that do and are happy for that to happen, then it needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want to just start at where you're comfortable to start,
Of
really?
course, yeah, no, that's fine, Deb. So basically, my partner and I, or ex-husband, got divorced in 2022. 2 weeks after that, the child arrangements proceedings were instigated by him. He claimed I'd stopped him having contact with our daughter, which wasn't the case at all. He just disappeared off the face of the planet for a few months, and despite chasing him, no contact whatsoever. So kind of just let life be. My daughter and I carried on sort of, happily within reason, always wondering, if he was ever going to come back onto the scene, but it was something that just didn't ever cross my mind, to be honest. During the marriage, he was abusive. He was very psychologically and emotionally abusive, which I'll be honest with you, as I'm sure, many people perhaps listening, and maybe yourself, Deb, will understand, like emotionally abuse is quite different when you're in it. It's quite hard to kind of comprehend what's really going on. I think
it's the worst form, and
yes, yeah,
nearly, I would say, all the women that we've supported will openly say that it is the worst form
yes,
of abuse. It's
yeah,
cruel.
yeah,
That's the only word that I can use to describe it. It's just pure cruelty.
yeah, absolutely. And I think like yourself, a lot of ladies out there, I don't class myself to be someone who's I'm quite strong an individual. So for me to kind of feel I've been through that, at first I was kind of that reflected on me personally, because I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? Was I being a bit silly? Did I this? Did I that? But actually, it's very manipulative. You've got the coercive control there. There's a lot of things that these abusers do emotionally, that it's like a roller coaster, and that's how I can only describe it. Sort of waiting for my Prince Charming to come back, and he must be there somewhere. Where's he gone? Kind of thing. Being very empathetic, I just wanted that individual who I met before we got married to kind of come back, and we'd live happily ever after. That was the fairy tale in my head. I had, I suppose, what I call a light bulb moment on our daughter's birthday, actually, and I was just, enough's enough now. She was witnessing mummy being sad, witnessing mummy crying quite a lot, a lot of shouting, and I just thought, actually, at the time I didn't think I deserved better, but I genuinely knew that she did, and that's when I thought, no, enough's enough now. Asked my ex-husband to leave, which he did. And obviously divorce proceedings was started by myself, and then that all was finalised, as I said, in 2022. And then there was this sort of gap, I suppose, which was only probably a month, if even that, before he then thrust us into these child contact arrangements, which to say was a surprise is putting it lightly. I remember on the time being on holiday, I think we were after the divorce, we were like, it had been a really tough couple of years, thinking, all right, we'll get some time away as a family. Had that time away, receiving an email from CAFCASS, which at the time I didn't even know who they were. I'd never heard of them. I used to work for social services, believe it or not, but I'd never come across them, even in my work, probably back in early 2005, I think I worked for them back then.
Yeah, well, I think CAFCASS are a law unto themselves, aren't they? Let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got this email. I remember being on holiday, opening it. Actually, I didn't even read it, because it said think it said child contact arrangements, and I was like, oh, that's not for me. And I didn't twig that it would be for me because, as I said, my ex-husband had sort of disappeared off the face of the planet as far as I was concerned, not interested in seeing our daughter, having contact with her. So I got this email and I was like, oh, it's not for me. Quickly replied saying, I think you've sent it in error, just so you know. I haven't opened it, I haven't read it because, you know, I appreciate it's confidential, and again forgot about it. Literally the day later, received exactly the same email, no kind of actually it is for you, but just literally a repetition of that same email. And I was like, oh, let me read it. And because it was logging onto a certain system, which at the time I couldn't access, we sort of holiday panned out, loving life, and newfound freedom after the divorce, etc., etc. Got home to like this massive, thick brown envelope in the post, and I was like, "What the hell's that?" And then obviously put two and two together. That was when obviously I'm reading the literature and the letters and the court paperwork that actually this was what he was doing, instigating court proceedings against me. And that's when the hell started, basically, around May 2022.
How many hearings have you attended since then?
Oh, that's a good question. I must admit, Deb, I haven't counted to know exactly, but I would say maybe roughly about 12, 13, if not a bit more than that, actually. It seems like it's been probably every 3 months, I think I've been to a court hearing, roughly.
And I know what that experience feels like, and even now, I still get that feeling in pit of my stomach every time I go, and that's supporting women. It's not even my case, and it still has that impact on me.
Oh yeah.
Because it is the most horrendous experience ever, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not.
They're literally playing God with your child's life, aren't they?
Literally, yeah, and it's I went into it perhaps naively, and I don't know if others do the same, but because I've sort of got a background, literally myself in the legal system, the police, social services, and in all my years there, I'd never come across anything, and say hand on heart, to this extent, anything. And I went into the courtroom maybe a little bit overly confident, if I'm honest, because I was like, right, my evidence is this is the truth, it's very clear, and this is what I've done, this is what he's done, and that's, from my perspective, it's another opportunity just for me to go, this is his deceitful behaviour again, here's my evidence, and that would be done as far as I was concerned. But I couldn't have been further from the truth, and that was furthest from my experience. Basically, my experience of the family court was nothing like what I would have thought it would be in a justice system. Nothing like it at all.
Oh, what actually happened?
Just, to sum it up, it was, as we've touched on it briefly before, barbaric, literally. And I don't even know if that would describe it in its entirety, to the impact it has on an individual, the child, obviously, most importantly, but just there's no concept of reality in my head. It was almost like I was going to a pantomime every time I attended a court hearing. It was almost like it was like the narrative was already panned out before I even got there. So no matter what I submitted, I self-represented pretty much. Well, apart from 2 court hearings out of all those, I self-represented, thinking, well, I know my story better than anyone. I learned a lot of the laws myself, or tried to as much as I could, thinking, I'm kind of educating myself on the system and the regulations, etc. And I genuinely went in thinking truth will prevail and there's nothing to worry about. And yes, I was nervous because obviously it's a courtroom and I've not been in that environment per se before. But what I experienced was just corruption, basically, from everyone, not just one person that I came across. Literally every single person I had contact with throughout these proceedings haven't done their job as they should do, and that's putting it mildly.
Yeah. So did that start with CAFCASS?
Yes, yeah, literally telephone call with a CAFCASS worker. Again, naively, I went into kind of, I'm a bit of a kind of OCD person when it comes to organising anyway, but obviously because of the importance of the case, i.e. our daughter, I was like, right, I've got all my evidence together, I've got my dates sorted, and here's this and here's that, thinking, obviously I'd relay that to her. Well, I had 12 pages really of evidence, shall we say, like summarizing dates and everything else. Went through some of that with her on the telephone call. Again, feeling that, you know, the call was quite fair and everything was as it should be at that time. Received the report, and I was like, is this the report about us, or has she mixed us up with another family and she's missed that out, and she's missed important welfare things out and about my daughter's well-being? And there was genuinely so much missing, and I tried to ring her, because I must admit I went into a panic and I was like, what is all this? Tried to ring her, she wouldn't pick up the phone, so I emailed saying, look, I think you've got us mixed up with another family here. Appreciate, you know, things are busy and, you know, you've got a lot of cases to manage, but, you know, I just want to be clear, you know, there's a lot of important detail omitted here. And I think I got a response saying, she's tried to summarise it the best she could. And I said, with all due respect, you've missed out really key information. I said, appreciate you're busy, so here is what I did, which, again, rightly or wrongly, I basically summarised it even more for her. I said, here's 3 pages of what I call the key things that will impact our daughter's welfare, well-being, and what you really, really need to know and possibly need to include. And she was just like, oh, sorry, the report's been submitted to court already, even though she gave me a deadline of X date to respond by, which I did. I met that deadline. But when I met the deadline she'd given me, she said, oh, sorry, the report's already gone, which is madness. Yeah.
What were the reports? Were the reports of abuse?
Yeah.
Did you mention domestic abuse?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. I gave as much detail as I could. Yeah.
Do you think that at that point, I mean, I think I know how they roll, but do you think at that point, the minute you mentioned domestic abuse, that's when it all changed?
Do you know what? I'm not sure, if I'm honest, Deb, because I think, you know, from my perspective, I do appreciate it's got to be child focused, but my mentioning of that domestic abuse was done in a child focused way, if that makes sense. So from my perspective, you know, our daughter was impacted by the way he treated me, and sometimes the way he also treated her. So I don't know if I'd say that mentioning domestic abuse did impact the way we were dealt with, but I will say it was underplayed massively, and that is again putting it mildly. You know, mentioning what I did, for me, that would be, or I hope normal people would be, serious concerns for the child, and also myself being thrust into the situation again. But it was just like, oh well, never mind. That's all historic. Yeah. Let's move forward positively. Well, actually,
they love that word, historic.
Yes. Yeah.
They love it. Yeah. But if roles were reversed, they would literally delve into your background. Yes. From needle to thread.
Oh yeah, I've had it done. Yes, yeah, and luckily I'm squeaky clean. But you know, I'm just, you know, there's nothing on me. There's no flies on me. Sadly, they tried to make up stuff, but even that they couldn't, because there was nothing there about my mental health and everything else.
Yeah, did they try that one? Did they pull the mental health card? Yeah, that is the classic one. Yeah. You know, it's a mental health. She ain't got capacity to look after a child. Yeah. You know, so what will we do? We'll remove that child.
Yeah. Well, there's no evidence of that. You know, I've never ever been to the doctors for any. Literally, and I'm 42 years old now. Never ever been to the doctors with any mental health issues. You know, given what I've been through, I think I'm bloody, excuse my language, but pretty kind of well together, shall we say, given everything that I've been dragged through.
But even if you had suffered with mental health, that doesn't make you a bad mother.
No, literally, you're right. Absolutely.
You know, there's probably 90% of population in one way or another at a certain point in their life have struggled with their mental health.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And just life in general, isn't it? It's hard, let alone throw in something like this into the mix, and just, you know, the roller coaster that's life normally. You'd have to be quite sort of, well, very robust or robotic not to be affected by certain things, just life in general.
Yeah, so what happened then after that, where you went into that first court hearing?
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm honest, the first court hearing's a bit of a blur. I mean, taking a step back, I complained about this CAFCASS worker because I was like, we're not having that, that's not the truth, and again, it's just doing things right. All I've ever wanted is people to do their jobs right. And I don't mean that in a condescending, patronising way, but when you're doing that type of job, it's not like you're doing some gardening, we're dealing with children's lives here and families' lives.
Yeah.
It's actually, you need to do that job. You need to have all the information you need that's relevant to keep that child safe, for that child's welfare, well-being, etc., etc. And so I did complain about this particular worker, and we received, or another worker was allocated to the case, but same, exactly the same, no better, and if anything, probably worse, if I'm being honest with you.
And what about how they treat you? What was that like?
How they treated me? Well, first, I'd never met this lady. So throughout the case, I'd never met her. So she liked to give her opinion on who I was, what I was doing, my mental health, the state of my home, apparently. She'd never visited my home throughout the court proceedings. I've never met her face to face, apart from a quick hello in the courtroom. So for her to be so clear on her judgment of me, I actually found quite disgraceful, to be honest with you, because I don't like to judge anyone. And again, in this situation, when you're dealing with a child's life, to actually judge me based on someone else's opinion, i.e. the opinion of my ex-husband, is very, very unfair. Come and meet me if you want, and we can talk about things, but don't judge me based on someone else's opinion.
So what happened after that? Well, how did it all? What happened in the? I call it the cesspit, but in the secret family court, what happened?
Yes, I think from my perspective, it all just evolved as the tick box exercise, which is what I understand it to be now. Which again, when I was in it, I was like, well, we can't do that because our daughter's not ready for that. She's stating to the worker that she's scared of her daddy, that he's mean and he hurts mummy and her. So why would you do X, Y, and Z? But for me, again, looking from sort of, the court case obviously closing, looking back, it was all just tick the box or onto the next box, tick that box. It was no, actually, we're not ready for that, or we're going from 0 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour here. They couldn't care less, to be honest. It was just they wanted to progress, move forward, whether our daughter was ready for it or not. And that was quite difficult. Well, I say quite difficult, very difficult to do, as I'm sure you're aware as a mum. You want to protect your child. Yes, I was always happy for there to be some level of contact, because rightly so, as far as I was concerned. My ex-husband isn't enough of a risk, shall we say, for them not to be. But my daughter wasn't ready for it. She would get letters from her dad in the post as part of the process, and she would wet herself because she was so scared, because her dad had written that he'd see her soon, and she didn't want to see him soon. She wasn't ready for it. But because that process didn't work, we moved on to the contact centre, which sadly was absolutely horrific for our daughter. That was stopped because that wasn't working, and they admitted that was because our daughter was so distressed. But then we moved on to the next step, which was a psychological assessment of a very, very young girl, which is disgraceful. I can't, and that's not even the words for it, Deb. It's disgraceful, isn't even cutting the hurt and the trauma and the distress they caused her. It's literally disgraceful.
I know, it's horrific.
Yeah.
So what was the outcome?
So end of last year, or towards the end of last year, my daughter was actually removed from my care for reasons of parental alienation, apparently. Even though I could send you a message on my phone now, and I could prove to you within 2 seconds that I never alienated our daughter from her father. I could prove that, and they've seen that. I can prove that in 2 seconds. And even in the final court hearing, he said that I'd never stopped him having contact with our daughter. I'd said he could see her every day, which I did say that. And the CAFCASS worker also said that at the final hearing, but she said she didn't feel that was realistic, which is fine, because it wasn't realistic in terms of a pattern moving forward, but it was said in terms of, let's negotiate, let's sit down, what's best for you, what's best for me. I'm happy with you to see her like every day, in terms of, the door's open, not you literally have to see her 7 days a week, but the door's open every day when you would like to see her. So despite that, I was still, PA claims were still held against me.
Disgraceful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, especially when the evidence is clear as day. It's just how someone can sit in a court of law and lie and lie and lie and lie to our daughter's detriment. Beyond me, how these people sleep at night, I just don't get it. Don't get it.
So what's happened now then? Do you have contact with your daughter on his say so?
Yeah, so cut a very long story short, since sort of end of last year, it basically progressed within probably, what are we talking, about 5 months to 50-50 care. Because he, from my opinion, he never really wanted our daughter in the first place, because he would have seen her even before the process if he did want to see her. It was all just about hurting me, because I got what our daughter needed from the divorce. It was all a bit of a get back and at me, is my opinion. I may be wrong, but that's my opinion of it. So we had a hearing, I think it was April this year, that basically meant that it was to be 50-50 care. We were commended by the judge, and he was like, I've never known this, for the transition from, having your child removed to 50-50 so quickly in all my 15 years. And I was like, I didn't say anything, but I was like, there's a reason for that, but I didn't say anything. I was just, keep my mouth quiet. And then June this year, we had a final hearing, which was just almost confirming the 50-50 care. And he is our daughter's, what do you call it, Deb? Is it resident parent? I've lost my words on that, but sort of, I'm sort of to have contact with parent, despite looking after our daughter all the years she's been on this planet by myself. So he controls us both now, our time and everything else, which again is part of the ongoing abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. And is he dictating the contact to you then?
Yes and no. He, during the summer holidays, school summer holidays, I've had our daughter a lot more than 50-50, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about. That's absolutely fine, but you can't have your cake and eat it. It's kind of, he is quite high level in terms of what he does, as am I, which, I completely respect. We've both got, work lives as most people, but when he dictates, you have our daughter then because I'm working abroad, which sadly he failed to mention at the final hearing. He said that he wasn't ever having to work abroad, and no one ever checked that up, so he sadly blatantly lied during that final hearing. And now it turns out it's very, very different from that. He's actually away quite a lot with his work. So I just feel control.
What reason do you think they do it? Why do they do it?
If I'm honest, I think what's the way of describing it? I didn't let them get away with what they were doing, put it that way. I always pushed back, or I always questioned everything. I always said, this is the practice direction on that, so why are you doing that? I always said, well, that wasn't the case.
They're not like that. They're not like that.
No, and I believe I've been punished for that, and they've punished me by using our daughter. I genuinely believe that. It was if I'd just gone, yes, of course, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, which I'm not like regardless. I believe, sadly, our daughter would be in a different situation.
Yeah, and I'm gonna agree with you there as well, because I'm sure, I'm 99.9% sure that you're right, and it would have been a different case scenario.
Yeah.
But how could they accuse you of parental alienation when they're not supposed to even be using parental alienation, is my understanding.
That's exactly what I said, yeah.
And what were their answers to that?
Nothing. We'll do as we please. Literally, we'll do as we please, Mrs. Eldon.
And this is what needs exposing, because they are literally doing what they want with families' lives, and there is absolutely nothing you could do about it.
No, and that's what I feel. And I think, again, I've always had hope, and don't ask me where that comes from. I still have it to this day now. I've always had hope that truth will always come out, because it always does, and it will do. I believe that. But I genuinely thought as well, being a court of law, they have to abide by the law. They have practice regulations or practice directions that they have to abide by. So every time I was like, well, hang on a minute, that's a breach of X, Y, and Z, or my ex-husband, he's just breached our court order. So what's the consequences of that? Nothing.
There ain't none.
No, there's literally nothing.
And this is why I keep saying the only way that there's going to be any difference is if they are opened up.
Yes.
And the only excuse that I get for the reasons why they won't open them up is because they like to read body languages and they like to see reactions.
That's a load of rubbish, isn't it?
That is the only explanation I have ever had as to why they won't open them up.
Yeah.
We need transparency.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the change needs to come in. I know they say they're doing all these sort of different cases across different parts of the country, but I don't know how much of that is
cherry picked.
Yeah, literally. Is that like the reality of it? Or as you said, is that cherry picking certain cases so you get like a little picture of it, but you don't actually get the full story? But I think sooner the full story is out there, the better, because like yourself, Deb, I know thousands of innocent families, and I mean innocent families that are in the same situation that we've been in, and children. Like, I know the mums are important as well, absolutely, but you've got children, young children in these situations, and what's it doing to their life? What's it doing to their mental and physical health? It's just shocking.
And it's the courts that are allowing this to go on.
Yes. Yeah, literally. With no care. I can say, hand on my heart, I've not spoken to one professional that cares.
No.
And I've always had that, the next person will care, I'll speak to them, they're going to care because their job is X, Y, and Z. No.
Well, do you know what? I can't say that it shocks me. I wish I could. No. Because, like you, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely mind-boggling how they are getting away with this to this day.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I know.
Why isn't anybody exposing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Yeah.
They're literally destroying people's lives and getting away with it with no consequence.
Exactly. And I think for me, like, just going back to my case specifically, I know many other people the same, but when you've got very clear evidence, like I never had a fact-finding hearing, and numerous times, literally probably every court hearing, I said, we need a fact-finding hearing. You can't say that without any evidence. We need a fact-finding hearing. No, we don't. That's all historic. We've moved on since then. Well, we haven't, because certain people are still lying. My evidence is very, very clear. No one's taken the time to read that. And in the midst of this, you've got a young child who's struggling and suffering. And a court of law, surely, surely the basics of a court of law are, let's get the evidence all together, let's have a review of that, and let's make decisions based on that. Not let's make it up as we go along, and they can say what they want to say. They can say that. It doesn't matter if you've got any evidence behind it. They just make it up as they go along. And I'm like, that's not.
You were literally stood there. You literally stood there with your jaw dropped, aren't you?
Yeah. Can't believe, literally, it's unbelievable. And I don't have any words without swearing. It's absolutely unbelievable.
I know.
Yeah. And I don't think until you're in it yourself, you can't believe it. Like,
no.
Not that this wasn't my day-to-day life, as I'm sure it wasn't yours and lots of other women, but you don't understand what actually goes on until you're in it yourself. I went into it very naively, genuinely, thinking, this is lovely. I've got lots of evidence, and silly him for raising these proceedings because he's going to look a bit of an idiot, isn't he? But no, not at all.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I think that a lot of women do go in there quite naive, not realizing that, because everybody believes that the law's there to protect them.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And there are safeguarding measures in place to protect children, which there isn't, because if you're raising any form of emotional harm towards your child by a perpetrator, they look at you as though you're insane. Yeah. You're making it up as though you're just some ex that wants to get revenge.
Yeah, literally that. Yeah.
So why can't they just see it for what it is? That, do you know what, actually, has this mother got genuine safeguarding concerns about her child?
Exactly. And I just don't that's the bit I don't understand. I've spent many sleepless nights thinking, who is actually benefiting from this? And all I can think of is the money that goes into the pot. I don't know who's benefiting. I don't know who up here is benefiting, or why it benefits them to lie, why it benefits them to lie. I don't know, apart from they all feed each other's pot of money as the process goes along. Basically, that's all I can think.
Money, power and control. It's what I've been saying all along.
Yeah.
And it's the very thing that a lot of domestic abuse victims have tried to escape from, and then they're faced with what they're faced with, which is exactly that.
Yeah. And I think as well, the abuse in the court is worse, for me personally anyway. Abuse through the court system via my ex-husband and the professionals I dealt with is worse than what I had in that relationship. And that's saying a lot, isn't it? And that says a lot about the justice system. What the hell is that all about?
I've had many a woman said to me, they wish they'd never left.
Yeah.
They wish they'd never left because it has literally destroyed them financially, emotionally. We're never ever going to know the true numbers of the amount of women that actually take their own lives because of this.
I can imagine. Yeah.
There's women that have had like heart attacks and things like that because of the trauma that the family courts have created.
I can imagine. Even the children as well. Again, not negating the mums, but our daughter, for example, her mental health and her physical health is dramatically deteriorated in what has been sort of 2 years of a very short life. And to watch that is the worst bit. As adults, yes, it's blimmin' hard, don't get me wrong, as an adult to deal with it, but to watch her go through what she's been through as a thriving, happy, happiest girl in the world before all this, and now to see her, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. And that's just one child out of probably thousands across the country.
Yeah, that will end up affecting the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And I bet she has absolutely no faith or trust in any law, because I know my children don't.
No, she's too scared. She's scared to speak out now. She has spoke out before, but they've made it worse for her. So now she's too scared.
Yeah, my son got where he was getting that frustrated because he just kept saying, why won't they listen to me? Why won't they listen to me? They're asking me the same thing, and I've told them over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's the presumption of child contact, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. At any cost. That's the thing.
Yeah, literally.
At any cost.
Yeah. And again, I don't.
And they don't care what that cost is.
No, and I can't get my head around that. Like, who in their right mind thinks that's okay? Not saying our case is mild, because obviously we've been through hell and back as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of the level of abuse, yes, it's wrong. But I've seen, sadly, cases that are horrific where children have been raped before by the dad, and they've been placed in that dad's care. Well, what is all that about? Like, who's doing the safeguarding, the risk assessment in those situations? Exactly.
And how can you even justify it?
Yeah, I know.
How can that even be allowed to even happen? Yeah. It's just beyond belief, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's what I can't get my head around. Like, I get they want to put money in the pot, but at what cost? Literally the cost of a child's life. That is what it boils down to, as far as I'm concerned. It's literally a child's life. We're not just messing with, it's a few years of their life perhaps, but those few years, they'll literally impact the rest of their life, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
No one's held accountable.
They're not. They're not in any of it. Police, social workers, family courts, CAFCASS, none of them are held accountable for damage that they cause. None of them.
No.
And unfortunately, I don't think that many of them care either.
No, and I can't get my head around that either. If I was doing that job, but doing it the way they did it, how would you sleep at night? I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Like, you have to be a real nasty person, and that again is putting it very mildly, to do what they've done and do and continue to do to families' lives, innocent families' lives, and put your head on the pillow. I've witnessed stuff through our daughter, and it keeps me awake at night. Like, and
Yeah.
that's just only small little pieces of our entire puzzle, if you know what I mean. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I can't rest easy with that, but they seem to. And we're just one of, hundreds maybe cases they've dealt with.
Yeah.
But these
Yeah.
people in these jobs, from my perspective, are meant to be in the job to safeguard children, to support children. CAFCASS are meant to be the voice of the child. Well, God, our CAFCASS worker couldn't be any further from it, sadly.
I think that if you spoke to most women that have experienced CAFCASS, I think they pretty much mirror what you're saying. And they're another organisation that I just do not know how the hell they're getting away with what they're getting away with.
No. And I think
But
sometimes
if we don't keep being brave and speaking out about this, it's just going to continue and continue.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's been going on for a long time now. I mean, I've done a little bit of research historically, and I think we're talking like 15 plus years now. And we're still,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we're still much further forward. Again, I'm not an expert,
No.
don't get me wrong, but I don't think we're further forward than what we were all those years ago in terms of the transparency, the accountability, the damage they're doing to innocent families. We're exactly the same position, if not maybe worse in some cases.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Shocking.
Well, we'll have to keep me up to date on everything, won't you?
Yeah, of course.
And please keep in touch.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Might be, you never know, we might end up working together further down the line.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd love that. I'm very passionate about helping women like through domestic abuse. It's just something like yourself, when you've experienced it, it's just something I really want to support women with, because it's not easy, is it? And again, that's putting it mildly. And I think sometimes people just need that community of others that have been through it to go, oh yeah, well they've gone through it. Yes, we've been through hell to get to the point we are now, but we've been through it, and if we can help others, then that's what it's all about, isn't it? So good for you for doing what you do as well, Deb.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard work, soul destroying. Hence why I'm full of cold.
Yeah,
I'm run down.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've just got to keep speaking out about it, because ultimately that's the only thing that's ever gonna get any sort of spark to prick the general public's ears up.
Absolutely.
To realise what is actually going on, because they're absolutely oblivious to even believe that this sort of thing goes on.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, like I said, not saying people don't believe it, but I think people don't believe the level of corruptness, the level of lack of accountability, and just the fictitious reporting. I've never known anything like it in my whole life, and I come from a the corporate background where I've worked in those organisations previously, and I've still been exposed to it myself through that, and it's just horrendous.
It is, bless you. But thank you for speaking to me.
No, thank you, Deb. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And keep in touch and take care.
Will do. And you, Deb. Hope you feel better soon. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.